Welcome to this explainer. Okay, right now we are witnessing one of the most fascinating and honestly industry-shaking shifts happening in tech today. We're talking about Meta's massive transformation. Yeah, the same closed social media ecosystem that brought us Facebook and Instagram is morphing into a powerhouse commercial cloud provider. It's a pivot literally nobody saw coming, and it is completely rewriting the rules of artificial intelligence infrastructure. To really wrap our heads around why this is happening, we have to look at the sheer mind-boggling scale of the investment. Meta has been pouring cash into infrastructure, spending an astonishing $125 billion to $145 billion. Just let that sink in for a second. They've been aggressively signing these multi-billion-dollar supply deals, sweeping up massive amounts of chips from NVIDIA and AMD, and building these absolutely colossal data centers. I mean, it's a level of capital expenditure that makes even the biggest Wall Street investors sweat. So that naturally leads us to the elephant in the room. How on earth do you recover that kind of cash? Well, when you're burning through capital on hardware at that rate, sitting on idle chips is literally leaving money on the table. The thing is, tech infrastructure isn't something you can just buy in tiny, perfectly measured increments. It arrives in these massive, indivisible blocks. So inevitably, you end up with all this excess capacity during times of low internal demand. And that dilemma, it brings us to a pretty incredible solution. Section 1. Meta's surprising cloud pivot. To tackle this astronomical bill, Meta quietly spun up a brand new internal division called Meta Compute. Basically, they are taking their intensely private, heavily guarded data centers and just opening the doors to outside businesses. They're allowing enterprise customers to come in and rent out their spare GPUs and AI hardware. It means Meta is diving directly into the commercial cloud market, operating almost like a public utility company for compute power. It fundamentally changes how tech companies value and purchase AI processing capabilities. Section 2. The billion-dollar motivation. Now, obviously, recovering those initial setup costs is a huge factor here, but there's a massive, brand new revenue stream in play: direct business-to-business income. Historically, Meta has relied almost entirely on ad sales, right? So this pivot suddenly builds a serious footprint for them in the enterprise cloud market. Plus, it completely solves that overbuilding problem we talked about. By selling the excess capacity, they ensure those highly expensive chips never just sit there gathering dust. And as a bonus, it gives them a way to promote their own proprietary software, like their advanced AI model, Use Spark, basically getting outside developers to pay to run queries right on Meta's home turf. What's wild is how fast this whole transformation happened. For years, there was this massive infrastructure accumulation, buying up every NVIDIA and AMD chip they could get their hands on. Then, over a period of just mere months, supply and demand shifted. Initially, Meta actually didn't have enough capacity and was renting from external providers like CoreWeave. But once their own giant data centers finally came online, they suddenly found themselves swimming in extra computing cycles. That led to a rapid executive reassessment over a few weeks where Mark Zuckerberg and the shareholders kind of looked around and realized they could sell this excess capacity at a huge premium. Within days, the structural transformation to launch Meta Compute was officially underway. Section 3. How Meta Compute works. Okay, let's break down the actual mechanics of how leaders like Santosh Jonadardhan, Daniel Gross, and Dina Powell-McCormick are running this operation. It's surprisingly elegant. Step 1, Meta constantly monitors its global data centers. Step 2, they pinpoint exactly which computing power their internal teams, the folks actually keeping Facebook and Instagram running, aren't currently using. And step 3, they efficiently redirect that unused power over to sophisticated external buyers who desperately need it for heavy AI training workloads. It's just a masterclass in real-time resource optimization. And for the users, they offer a really interesting dual service model. You get two choices. You can either buy raw, bare metal GPU capacity, which means you are essentially plugging straight into the physical chips themselves to run your highly custom workloads. Or, if you want something a bit more streamlined, you can just buy API access to their pre-hosted AI models. It's kind of like choosing between renting an empty, bare-bones warehouse to build your own factory from scratch, or just renting a fully equipped production line. Section 4. The market earthquake. Make no mistake, when a literal Goliath like Meta suddenly dumps a vast amount of highly efficient, cheap GPU power right onto the market, it changes the laws of physics for cloud pricing. It floods the entire market with supply. And what happens when supply skyrockets? It immediately intensifies pricing pressure on anyone else out there trying to rent out AI hardware. Suddenly, the cost to actually train these massive AI models is getting a whole lot cheaper. And the fallout across the industry is just dramatic. The traditional hyperscalers, we're talking AWS, Google Cloud, Microsoft Azure, they are suddenly staring down some serious margin compression just to stay competitive. Then you look at the neoclouds, those specialized startups like CoreWeave and Nebius. They are experiencing sudden stock drops in severely strained relationships because, well, their absolute biggest customer just became their fiercest competitor. But for enterprise customers and AI startups, it's a complete gold rush. They are getting cheaper, faster deployment, and they finally have a real viable alternative to the traditional cloud monopolies. No more waiting in endless queues for chips. Section 5. Risks and Hidden Catches. But hold your horses. Before you rush out to completely ditch your traditional cloud provider for meta compute, there is a very vital distinction you need to understand. Unlike AWS or Google Cloud, which give you this massive full-stack ecosystem of security tools, managed databases, and tons of developer support, Meta is offering something much, much more stripped down. Meta compute is just raw hardware capacity. That means you need highly sophisticated, highly technical staff on your own payroll to manage that hardware, lock down the security, and build the entire infrastructure around it. This is definitely not a plug-and-play setup for beginners. Which brings us to the real operational risks here. The biggest one by far, internal priority conflicts. Remember, at the end of the day, Meta is an AI and social media company first. If Mark Zuckerberg suddenly decides his internal AI projects desperately need a massive surge in power for the next big tech rollout, Meta might restrict or even completely recall the capacity they promised to you, the external client. Combine that huge unknown with the lack of full-stack support we just talked about, and the reliance on a very concentrated group of highly technical buyers, and you can quickly see why this isn't exactly a perfect fit for your standard run-of-the-mill business. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this final, honestly provocative thought. Meta has absolutely proven that you can monetize your unused massive hardware stockpiles. But what happens if Google, Amazon, and Microsoft all wake up one day and decide to aggressively flood the market with their own excess hardware at the exact same time? Could the rental price of AI compute power just collapse entirely? We might literally be standing on the edge of a massive market oversupply that redefines the future economics of AI hardware forever. Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive. Keep your eyes on those data centers, folks. The real tech war has only just begun.